The dark secret of the Nag Hammadi scrolls. Is our reality an artificial matrix of the Archons? These are in the other dimensions that we usually do not see, unless, of course, it's divine will that we see them, whether angels or demonic entities. In 1945 in Egypt, the farmer Muhammad Ali stumbled on a large jar of red clay under one of the boulders. It happened at the area of Jebel al-Tarif, not far from Nag Hammadi. When Ali and the other farmers smashed the found item, they discovered the mysterious content, which consisted of 13 bundles tied with leather. At the time, it did not occur to Ali or anyone else that these were the most ancient documents of Christianity, the Gnostic writings. The Christian religions to this day reject the Gnostic writings, which say, among other things, that the spirit of mankind has been controlled by beings, Archons, for thousands of years. The writings of Nag Hammadi go back to an early and mysterious Christian movement called Gnostics. This term comes from the Greek term gnosis, meaning knowledge or cognition. The content and general philosophical gnosis contrasts sharply with traditional biblical teaching and later Christian teaching. First of all, they rejected the incarnation of the so-called Son of God. The Gnostics claimed that Jesus visited the earthly world, only in a kind of pseudo-body. Gnostics have always rejected the element of the so-called redemption on the cross. The writings from Nag Hammadi are often erroneously referred to as the Gospel, which is not true. But the fact that they clearly date back to the time when the Gospels were written. Since their discovery, they have caused the most extensive speculation. The scriptures are considered to be a loose collection of supposed sayings of Jesus Christ. The Church considers the writings from Nag Hammadi to be heretical forgeries. The Gnostics, while studying the writings from Nag Hammadi, came across some interesting records. The records contain reports of encounters with anorganic beings called Archons. Gnostics' teachings claim that these creatures appeared before the creation of our planet. It goes on to say that the Archons perceive our solar system as their domain. The question of how we should think of the Archons still divides modern science. Gnostic teachings are based on the theory that these entities are purely physical in nature, which is one of the possible reasons why modern science does not take this issue seriously. Maybe the Archons and so-called demons come from the same philosophical and energetic essence. So these Archons are demons. After all, even the Old and New Testament describes the existence of demons. These beings are described as the rulers of the dark world. Even Jesus himself healed people of sickness through a form of exorcism. According to Gnostic teachings, Archons and demons are able to control the minds of their victims. In other words, it's an ingeniously constructed spiritual control system. Archons are ideal messengers of deception, and this is exactly what the Gnostic teachings say. The Archons can influence our consciousness through the so-called subconscious conditioning techniques. The Apocalypse of St. John, the book of Revelation, there Jesus teaches his brother James, the son of Joseph, saying that our world is guarded by demons, Archons, who block the connection between the physical and spiritual worlds in human beings, while the human spirit is in captivity. Jesus very often called the Archons the lords of the world. There are even various physical descriptions of Archons in the Gnostic codices. Basically, there are two types. One, embryonic type, which is similar to a newborn. Two, draconian reptilian type. This information is very important because when studying the UFO environment in this context, it's quickly found that the above description of the embryonic types corresponds exactly to the greys with their large heads and characteristic black almond-shaped eyes. The same can be said about reptilians. In this regard, it may be worth accepting the idea that the Archons are able to temporarily materialize, appearing in the form of physical beings and deceiving us with their mimicry in the form of extraterrestrial visitors. Let's remember demons are shapeshifters. Let's remember what the Apostle Paul said concerning the evil one. He appeared as an angel of light to Eve, enticed her with his beauty so much that she just fell for everything he was telling her, which was a bunch of lies. Now, the theory is spreading that they are not part of our three-dimensional reality, but penetrated from other places, from other dimensions, and form a material body only for the duration of their stay here. Whether this is a purely biological body, it has not been conclusively proven, although, of course, there are various claims. The Gnostics also tell us that the Archons exist in an environment consisting of 5 or even more dimensional levels. In this case, we're dealing with a high resonance species that is able to attack and potentially occupy a certain part of our subtle bodies in order to take people under control in this way. Also, Jacques Vallée, a well-known scientist and UFO researcher, agrees with the original Gnostic theory on many points, suggesting that the UFO phenomena is basically a kind of deception program. Other historical writings even say that the Archons are a kind of divine creators of the universe and helpers of the demiurge. It's said that this God stood between the human race and the transcendent God, the divine God, who could only become divine through knowledge of the true nature of man. In the Old Testament, Archons are represented as fallen angels and demons. Researcher Robert Stanley claims that these terrifying creatures were brought into our universe by space travelers in the very, very distant past through stargates located near our solar system. Stanley also refers to materials from Nag Hammadi. John Lash, author of the book The Reptilian Agenda, writes that the Gnostic teachings perceives the Archons as extraterrestrial force that unconsciously affects the human mind and intellect and deviates it from the right and healthy path, which in turn leads to the fact that we are often prone to irrational and atypical actions such as greed, wars, and power. Gnostic teachings also suggest that the Archons seek to prevent us from recognizing and accepting the gift given to us by the divine mind of our light, our creative power. In sociological terms, this means that the Archons intrude into our consciousness primarily through religion and politics, so that gradually a person is able to turn against his own innate potential, including the systematic violation of the laws of nature. In this context, Gnosticism claims that the Archons can manipulate our consciousness so that in the end, a person simply makes mistakes that he cannot correct. The Gnostics, on the other hand, argue that the Archons do not have access to our genetic material, but can pretend to have hacked it. In this context, we must ask if the entire matrix in which humanity has been for thousands of years can actually be some kind of fraudulent program of the forces of the Archons. Given the confusion of humanity in our time and many lies that have become widespread, such a scenario is quite possible. For it's characteristic of the work of this entity that we imagine and take things as true, knowing that in reality it may be possible simulation of this reality. The Gnostics have a very remarkable perception of how far a person had deviated from his true path, so that hypothetically speaking, in the worst case, he might never reach his goal. The Gnostic teachings also say in this context that humanity can escape the influence of the Archons only through a special connection with a spiritual power. They call this Sophia, in other words, the wisdom of God. In very simple terms, we can think of it as plunging our soul into darkness. Recently, many researchers have begun to incline to the opinion that the Archons can perceive our mind as a computer controlled in a certain direction by constantly issuing commands. In this regard, there are rumors that the Archons are some kind of a virus that will kill our free will. Gnostics have always known that a person can be almost completely archonized. Gnostics have always seen the human face of Archons in all walks of life, but especially in the fundamentally evil nature of human societies and institutions. Researcher John Lash argues that although the Archons exist physically, the real danger they possess to humans is not a potential invasion of the planet, but an invasion of the human spirit. If we consider this hypothesis, then the path of the Archons runs like a red thread through the entire history of mankind. Even in our time, it's believed that almost all systems of the last century are based on the pollution of consciousness by archonic forces. And given the above assumptions, mystic fascist ideology dominates our society today. This mystical fascist ideology should be seen as a virus that has spread like wildfire across the earth over the past 100 years. But what can we do to successfully counter this madness? The Gnostics believe that only by confronting the madness and inhumanity within and without can we see what is truly human. It turns out that part of the Archon program is to leave us in a kind of trance so that we cannot gain the necessary knowledge and awareness, so that we cannot recognize the madness that has grown in this world like a cancerous tumor. Archons are magicians and puppeteers rolled into one, but when the spirit of life rises and the enlightened power of the body strengthens our soul, then no one and nothing can harm us. Of course, that is with our belief in our Lord Jesus Christ and his strength. This is on Soul Ask. Please leave your comments, and thank you for your support. Kindly support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support, and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.